Captain Myra Hayes adjusted her formal diplomatic uniform with practiced precision, her dark hair pulled into a tight bun at the nape of her neck. As the representative of the Independent Trade Federation, she was obligated to attend this celebration hosted by the Krell Empire, notorious slavers and conquerors of a dozen systems. Her stomach churned as she entered the grand hall of the Krell flagship, her Federation badge feeling like a lead weight on her chest. "Captain Hayes, so pleased you could join us," purred Ambassador Trazik, a tall Krell with obsidian scales and six-fingered hands adorned with ceremonial rings. "The trade agreements between our peoples flourish, do they not?" Myra forced a diplomatic smile. "They do, Ambassador. The Federation values our neutral arrangements." "Then you must partake in our victory ceremony. The subjugation of the Cresian system was most profitable." Trazik guided her through the crowded hall where various dignitaries from aligned systems mingled, drinking emerald liquor from crystalline glasses. The music, a dissonant, unsettling melody, suddenly stopped. All eyes turned to a central platform where two Krell guards emerged, leading a slender figure between them. Myra's breath caught in her throat. A woman, no, not human, but humanoid, stood on display. Her skin had a pearlescent sheen that caught the light, and faint patterns of luminescence pulsed beneath it like distant stars. Her eyes, large and expressive, glowed with an inner light that shifted between blue and violet. She wore nothing but a translucent silver shroud and restraints of some unknown metal around her wrists and neck. "Ah, the entertainment arrives," Trazik said with unsettling enthusiasm. "A fine specimen of the Luminari race. They make exceptional companion creatures, beautiful, silent, and utterly obedient." "Companion creatures?" Myra echoed, unable to hide her disgust. "Yes, their vocal cords are modified at capture. They communicate through their light patterns, quite beautiful, really, but can never speak against their masters." Trazik sipped his drink. "This one is special, captured from their sacred temple. She will be gifted to Warlord Krevnak for his success in the Cresian campaign." Myra watched as the Luminari woman was paraded before the assembled crowd. Unlike the vacant expressions she had glimpsed on other enslaved beings throughout the evening, this woman's eyes blazed with an unmistakable intelligence and defiance. When those luminous eyes met Myra's across the room, something passed between them, a recognition, a plea. "What's her name?" Myra asked. Trazik laughed. "Companion creatures don't have names, Captain. They're registered by designation codes." The ceremony began. Warlord Krevnak, a massive Krell with battle scars crisscrossing his scales, approached the platform. When he grabbed the Luminari woman's chin to examine her like livestock, the woman's skin flashed with a pattern of lights that caused Krevnak to jerk back his hand as if burned. "Spirited," he growled, "but not for long." Something snapped inside Myra. 15 years of diplomatic service, of looking the other way, of maintaining the Federation's precious neutrality, all of it suddenly felt hollow. "I claim the right of purchase," Myra called out, her voice ringing through the hall. The room fell silent. Trazik turned to her, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "I beg your pardon, Captain." Myra stepped forward, heart hammering against her ribs. "By Article 7 of our trade agreement, Federation officials may claim priority purchase of non-strategic goods during ceremonial exchanges." She straightened her shoulders. "I wish to purchase this Luminari." "She is not for sale," Krevnak snarled. "She is my tribute." "Then I invoke the right of superior offer," Myra countered, grateful for her years studying Krell legal codes. "Name your price, Warlord." The standoff lasted nearly 10 minutes. Credits were transferred, threats thinly veiled as pleasantries were exchanged, and finally, miraculously, the Luminari woman was guided to Myra's side. As they left the hall under the burning glares of the Krell elite, Myra whispered to the woman beside her, "I'm calling you Adara. It means fire in an old Earth language." She unfastened her diplomatic cape and wrapped it around the woman's shoulders. "And you're not property anymore." The lights beneath Adara's skin pulsed in complex patterns, and though she couldn't speak, her eyes conveyed what words could not. Gratitude, hope, and a fierce determination that matched Myra's own. They had until sunrise before the Krell would realize exactly what Myra had done, not just purchased a slave, but committed an act of rebellion that would make them both fugitives across the stars. The horizon broke through the Krell flagship's security perimeter with a burst of emergency thrusters, alarms blaring throughout the sleek vessel. Captain Myra Hayes gripped the controls, her knuckles white as she executed a series of evasive maneuvers that sent them tumbling through the defensive grid. "Hold on, Adara," she called over her shoulder. In the co-pilot's seat, Adara's luminescent skin flickered rapidly, her eyes wide as she instinctively braced against the ship's violent movements. The restraint collar still circled her neck, a cruel piece of Krell technology that needed specialized tools to remove without harming her. "Two pursuit vessels on our tail," announced the ship's AI, its voice unnervingly calm. "Krell Raptor class, they are charging weapons." Myra swore under her breath. "Divert auxiliary power to rear shields." Her fingers danced across the control panel, plotting a jump trajectory. "We need 3 minutes to reach the jump point. Let's hope the horizon remembers how to dance." A blast rocked the ship, sending sparks cascading from an overhead panel. "Rear shields at 60%, the AI reported. Myra guided the ship into a dense asteroid field, a risky move, but one that might give them the cover they needed. "Sorry about the rough exit," she said to Adara. "Diplomatic missions usually end with handshakes, not firefights." Adara's skin pulsed with light patterns, complex, rapid sequences that Myra couldn't interpret. The Luminary woman pointed urgently at the navigation console, then to a specific quadrant on the star map. "You want us to head there?" Myra asked, dodging another asteroid. Adara nodded vigorously, her eyes pleading. "I don't know what's in that sector, but right now, any direction away from here works for me." Myra adjusted their course. "Jump coordinates locked, 30 seconds." The ship shuddered as another blast grazed their shields. Adara's hands flew to her restraint collar, her skin flashing in what Myra now recognized as distress. "We'll get that off you as soon as we're safe," Myra promised, reaching across to briefly squeeze Adara's hand. "I know someone who specializes in Krell tech." The stars stretched into lines of light as the horizon made its jump, leaving the Krell pursuers behind, temporarily at least. The immediate danger past, Myra set the ship on autopilot and turned to face Adara fully. "I need to know if you understand me," she said gently. "1 flash for yes, 2 for no." Adara's skin glowed once, a bright affirmative pulse. "Good, I'm Myra Hayes, captain of the independent trade vessel Horizon." She gestured around them. "This ship is my home, and now it's yours too, until we figure things out." Over the next several hours, they developed a rudimentary communication system. Adara would flash her skin in patterns, sometimes guiding Myra's hand to draw symbols when the concepts were complex. Through this painstaking process, Myra learned that Adara had been captured during a raid on her people's sacred learning temple, where she had been a keeper of historical records. "The coordinates you showed me, is that where more of your people are?" Myra asked. 1 flash, yes. "Are they free or enslaved?" 2 flashes, no, enslaved." As they traveled through hyperspace, Myra searched her ship's database for information about the Luminari. The official records were sparse, describing them as a decorative species with limited cognitive capacity, ideal for companionship roles. The unofficial records, compiled by underground resistance networks, told a different story. The Luminari were once renowned as powerful telepaths and keepers of intergalactic history before the Krell systematically subjugated them. After 3 days of space travel, they docked at a remote outpost in the Vega Nebula, known for its discretion and black market technological expertise. Myra arranged a meeting with an old contact, a former Federation engineer named Jax Orion who had gone off-grid years ago. "Captain Hayes," Jax greeted her, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused. "Still playing at diplomacy, I see." "Not anymore," Myra replied grimly. "I need your help with Krell suppression tech." When Jax saw Adara and the restraint collar, his expression hardened. "These collars are barbaric, designed to sever the neural pathways to the vocal cords while leaving the mind intact." He examined it carefully. "I can remove it, but the process isn't pleasant." Adara's skin flashed determinedly, a clear yes. The procedure took hours. When it was finally over, Adara lay exhausted on a medical cot, her neck bruised but free of the restraint. Jax handed Myra a small device. "This is a neural stimulator. It might help regenerate the damaged pathways. No guarantees, but the Luminari physiology is remarkably resilient." Back on the horizon, Myra gently applied the stimulator to Adara's throat each day. 2 weeks passed, filled with close calls as they evaded Krell patrols. The bounty on their heads had reached staggering amounts, Myra for treason against the trade agreements, Adara for being stolen property. Then, one night as they drifted in the shadow of a gas giant, Adara woke Myra with a touch to her shoulder. The luminary woman's skin glowed softly in the darkness of the cabin. Thank you, Adara whispered, her voice raspy and halting but unmistakably clear. Myra sat up, stunned. You can speak. Not everything yet, Adara replied carefully, each word seeming to cost her effort. But enough to tell you, my people need you, I need you. She took Myra's hand, her skin illuminating with patterns that now seemed to complement her words rather than substitute for them. The Krell fear us because we remember all of history in our minds. What do you remember, Adara? Adara's eyes glowed intensely. How to defeat them. The magnetic storm surrounding the abandoned mining facility provided perfect cover for the horizon. Within its walls, Adara stood before Myra and their newfound ally Jax, her voice growing stronger with each passing day. The Luminari were not always as you see me, Adara explained, her luminescent patterns flowing across her skin as she spoke. We were the memory keepers of the galaxy, living archives of all knowledge and history. Myra watched, transfixed, as Adara activated a small projector salvaged from the facility. Light spilled forth, manipulated by Adara's own bioluminescence to form three-dimensional images, luminari as they once were, their bodies radiating with unconstrained power, their cities floating among the clouds of their homeworld. Our greatest ability wasn't our telepathy, but our collective memory, Adara continued. Each luminari carries the complete history of our people from birth, and with training, we can access the memories of other species who share their histories with us. Living databases, Jax whispered, his cybernetic eye recording everything. No wonder the Krell wanted to control you. They couldn't control what they feared, Adara said bitterly. So they developed the suppression technology, first the collars, then genetic modifications forced upon captured luminari. With each generation, more of our abilities were diminished. Myra approached the projection, but not yours. I was training in the Temple of Remembrance when they came. The temple's shields protected me from the worst effects of their suppression fields. Adara's eyes dimmed momentarily with grief. I alone retained access to our complete ancestral memory. The others, my family, friends, their memories were fragmented, buried deep where even they cannot access them. Can they be restored? Myra asked. Yes, Adara's skin brightened with determination. The temple contained resonance crystals attuned to our neural patterns. With them, I can reawaken what was forcibly hidden. But the temple is now a Krell stronghold on our homeworld. Jax paced the room, mechanical fingers tapping against his thigh. Even if we could get you there, one freed luminari can't stand against the Krell Empire. We won't be alone, Myra said, pulling up a star chart. I've been making calls. There are resistance cells across 12 systems, species subjugated by the Krell who have been waiting for an opportunity. She highlighted several points on the map. Underground networks, defected Krell military independent traders who have lost homes to expansion. They've been fighting isolated skirmishes for years, but lacked a unifying cause. And now they have won, Adara said, placing her hand over Myra's on the console. The touch sent a pleasant warmth through Myra's arm. The Luminari were peacekeepers before we were slaves. If I can restore even a small group of my people, their awakened abilities could unite the resistance. Over the following days, they formulated their plan. Jax would reach out to his black market contacts for specialized equipment. Myra would coordinate with resistance leaders. Adara would prepare for the awakening ritual. During a rare moment of quiet, Myra found Adara standing alone in the observation bay, gazing at the stars. Second thoughts? Myra asked, joining her. No, Adara replied, her voice now flowing more naturally. But I am. Afraid, not of failure, but of success. The Adara who entered the temple as a student died the day the Krell came. I've been reborn in freedom, thanks to you. She turned, her eyes meeting Myra's. When my people awaken, who will I be to them? Who will they be to each other after generations of enslavement? Myra stepped closer, drawn by something deeper than duty or rebellion. You'll be their hope, and whatever comes after, whoever you become, I'll be there. The words surprised her with their intensity, their truth. Adara's skin illuminated with a pattern Myra had never seen before, intricate, pulsing with colors that seemed to reach out toward her. In Luminari tradition, Adara whispered, this light pattern is shared only with those who hold one's heart. Myra raised her hand, hovering just above the glowing patterns on Adara's arm. May I? When Adara nodded, Myra gently traced the luminescent designs. Beneath her fingertips, Adara's skin warmed, the lights following her touch as if responding to her. It's beautiful, Myra murmured. It means our paths are joined, Adara said softly. Beyond duty, beyond gratitude. Their first kiss was hesitant, a gentle discovery. The second was not. When they finally parted, Adara's entire body glowed with a soft, pulsing light that mirrored her quickened heartbeat. Their moment of connection was shattered by the ship's alarm. On the bridge, Jax was frantically working the communications array. We've been compromised, he announced grimly. Someone sold information on your bounty. 3 Krell hunter ships just entered the system. Myra slipped back into the role of captain instantly. Prepare for emergency departure. How long until they reach us? 20 minutes, maybe less. Adara stepped forward. The storm will mask our signature, but not for long. We need to leave now. Her eyes had hardened with resolve. It's time to gather our allies and make our stand. As the Horizon's engines roared to life, Myra took one last look at the star chart. Their next destination was marked clearly: Nova Station, the largest underground hub of resistance in the sector. Plot a course, she ordered, and send word ahead. Tell them we're bringing the fire that will burn the Krell Empire to the ground. Nova Station hung in the shadow of a dead star, its dilapidated exterior belying the vibrant hub of activity within. Once a Federation mining operation, it had been abandoned during the resource wars and claimed by those seeking refuge from galactic powers. Myra guided the Horizon through the intricate docking procedure, hyper-aware of the 6 ships that had escorted them through the final approach, protection against Krell scouts that constantly patrolled the sector's edge. I've never seen so many different species working together, Adara remarked, watching through the viewports as members of at least a dozen different civilizations moved through the station's main thoroughfare. Necessity breeds unusual alliances, Myra replied. Everyone here has lost something to the Krell or their allies. Jax powered down the ship systems, his cybernetic implants interfacing directly with the controls. We should expect a mixed reception. Your Federation credentials won't win any popularity contests here, Captain. Nova Station's Leadership Council convened in what had once been the station's operations center, now a chamber filled with mismatched furniture and representatives from across the galaxy. At its head sat Commander Nerissa Tau, a formidable woman with intricate scarification marking her dark skin, identifying her as a survivor of the Krell invasion of the Marathi system. Captain Hayes, she acknowledged coldly. Until recently, you represented those who turn a blind eye to our suffering. Myra stood tall. I'm not here as a Federation representative. I'm here because neutrality is no longer an option. And why should we trust you now? Before Myra could answer, Adara stepped forward, her skin illuminating with patterns so bright they cast shadows across the chamber. Because she risked everything to save one slave when she could have continued her comfortable life. Because she stands before you now, hunted like the rest of us. Nerissa studied Adara intently. A luminari who speaks. The rumors were true. She gestured to an elderly being with translucent skin seated to her right. Eldermost Varric knows of your kind's history. He believes your people could change the tide of this conflict. Over the following hours, Adara shared the complete truth of the luminari capabilities and their plan to awaken her people. Maps were spread across tables, intelligence reports exchanged, resources allocated. A daring operation took shape. A small team would infiltrate the Temple of Remembrance on the Luminari homeworld, now renamed Krell Colony Theta 9. The window of opportunity comes in 3 standard weeks, Nerissa explained, highlighting a sector on the galactic map. The Krell Warfleet reassigns during their solstice ceremony. Security will be reduced by 30%. Still leaves us outgunned and outnumbered, Jax observed. That's why we need the resonance crystals, Adara insisted. Even awakening a dozen of my people could turn the tide. Our telepathic abilities can disrupt their communication systems, confuse their troops. As the council meeting adjourned, Myra and Adara were assigned quarters in the station's inner ring, a small but private space with a viewport facing the dead star. "Tomorrow we begin combat training for you," Myra said, securing their door. "If we're infiltrating a Krell stronghold, you'll need more than memories." Adara's response was to step closer, her fingertips tracing the line of Myra's jaw. "Tonight, I don't want to think about war. Tonight, I want to create memories of my own." The 3 weeks on Nova Station passed in a blur of preparation and stolen moments of intimacy. By day, Adara trained in combat techniques adapted to her luminary physiology, learning to use her bioluminescence to blind and disorient opponents. Myra coordinated with resistance cells across 4 systems, synchronizing their attacks to coincide with the infiltration. By night, they explored each other with increasing familiarity, Myra discovering how Adara's skin illuminated with different patterns depending on where she touched, Adara learning the stories behind each of Myra's scars. "This one?" Adara asked, tracing a thin line across Myra's ribs as they lay entwined in their quarters. "Diplomatic mission gone wrong on Taurus Prime," Myra replied, her breath catching as Adara's fingers moved lower. "Turns out, refusing a marriage proposal from the High Sovereign is considered an act of war." Adara laughed, the sound still novel and precious. "And this?" Her lips brushed a star-shaped mark on Myra's shoulder. "Less exciting, training accident at the academy." Myra pulled Adara closer. "Enough about my past, I'm more interested in our future." The night before the mission, they made love with a desperate intensity, both aware of what tomorrow might bring. Afterward, as Adara slept, her skin glowing with gentle pulses, Myra slipped from bed and met Jax in the station's communication hub. "Final preparations are complete," he reported. 12 ships, including the Horizon, ready for departure at 500. "And the intelligence?" Myra asked. Jax's expression darkened. "Confirmed. The Krell know something's coming, not the details, but enough to be on alert," someone talked. "Can we abort?" "Too late. The other cells are already in motion." Myra ran a hand through her hair. "Then we adjust. I want security doubled on Adara during the approach. If something goes wrong, the mission is her, getting her to the temple, no matter the cost." "Including you?" Jax asked quietly. Myra didn't answer. The next morning, as their small fleet prepared to depart, alarms blared throughout Nova Station. Security barriers slammed into place as squads rushed toward the central hub. "We've been infiltrated," Nerissa's voice announced over the comms. "Krell assassins in Sector 4. Myra grabbed Adara's hand, pulling her toward the Horizon's docking bay. "They're not here for the station. They're here for you." They rounded a corner into a maintenance corridor and found themselves face to face with a Krell operative, his scaled skin painted matte black for stealth operations, his eyes fixing on Adara with predatory focus. "The aberration," he hissed, weapon raising. Myra shoved Adara behind her, drawing her own blaster, too slow. The Krell fired. Pain bloomed across Myra's shoulder as she returned fire, catching the operative in the throat. He collapsed, but the damage was done. "Myra," Adara cried, catching her as she stumbled. "It's nothing," Myra lied, feeling warm blood soaking her flight suit. "We need to move now." They reached the Horizon as the station's defenses engaged, battling the Krell infiltration team. Jax was already at the controls, engines primed. "The fleet?" Myra asked, gritting her teeth against the pain as Adara applied pressure to her wound. "Scattered, following contingency protocols. We're meeting at the secondary rendezvous point." As the Horizon detached from Nova Station, Myra watched through the viewport as explosions blossomed across the structure. Their safe haven was compromised. The final assault would now begin from a position of desperation rather than strength. "Set course for the Luminary homeworld," she ordered, her vision blurring slightly. "We've lost the element of surprise, but we still have hope." Adara's hands glowed as she tended to Myra's wound, her eyes fierce with determination. "We have more than hope," she said. "We have each other, and soon we'll have my people." The Luminary homeworld hung before them like a jewel set in black velvet. Once vibrant mountains and floating cities now reduced to Krell mining operations and labor camps. The Horizon, along with the 7 remaining vessels of their fleet, maintained position in the sensor shadow of the system's largest moon. Preliminary scans confirm heightened security at all major facilities, Jax reported grimly. They were expecting us. Myra studied the tactical display, her injured shoulder heavily bandaged but still causing her to wince with each movement. The Temple of Remembrance. Heavily guarded but not as fortified as the administrative centers, the Krell still underestimate its significance. Adara stood silently before the viewport, her skin barely glowing, a technique she had perfected to remain undetectable to Krell's sensors. After a moment, she turned to face the gathered resistance leaders aboard the Horizon's bridge. The underground passages beneath the southern temple complex remain unmarked on Krell maps, she said with quiet certainty. My ancestral memories confirm they connect to the central chamber where the resonance crystals are stored. That's our way in, Myra decided. A small team, minimal signature, while the main fleet creates a diversion in the northern hemisphere. Commander Nerissa, who had escaped Nova Station's destruction, nodded solemnly. My ships will engage their orbital defenses. We can maintain their attention for 2 hours, no more. The plan crystallized quickly. Nerissa's fleet would launch an apparent full-scale assault on the primary Krell military installation. Meanwhile, Myra, Adara, and a specialized infiltration team would use the Horizon's advanced stealth systems to approach the southern continent. From there, they would access the temple through the forgotten underground passages. As final preparations were made, Myra found Adara in their quarters, methodically adjusting the settings on a small device. The neural stimulator Jax had modified to amplify luminary telepathic patterns. Second thoughts, Myra asked softly. Adara looked up, her luminescent eyes shifting through colors that Myra had learned to recognize as complex emotions. Not about our mission, about after. She set down the device. The luminari I awaken will not be as I remember them. They've lived generations in captivity. Their anger, their pain, it could consume them. Myra sat beside her, taking her hand. Then they'll need you to show them another way. She brushed her fingers along the patterns that glowed beneath Adara's skin. You've taught me that freedom isn't just about breaking chains. It's about what you build afterward. And what will you build, Myra Hayes, when this is over if we survive? There was vulnerability in the question. Something I never thought possible as a Federation captain, Myra answered honestly. A home with you if you'll have me. Their kiss was both promise and farewell, neither knowing if they would survive the coming hours. The infiltration began precisely as planned. While Nerissa's fleet engaged the Krell defenses in a spectacular display of firepower, the Horizon slipped through the chaos, landing in a dense forest 5 kilometers from the temple complex. The underground passages were ancient, carved with luminescent symbols that responded to Adara's presence, glowing brighter as she passed. The team moved in silence, guided by her ancestral knowledge through twisting corridors that had remained undisturbed for centuries. They emerged into the central chamber just as the temple above shook with the impact of distant bombardment, the diversion working as planned. The chamber was vast, its domed ceiling etched with star maps of a bygone era. At its center stood a crystalline structure, pulsing with faint blue energy. The heart of remembrance, Adara whispered reverently, still intact after all these generations. As she approached the crystal, Krell alarms suddenly blared throughout the complex. Myra's comm unit crackled with Jax's urgent voice. Captain, they've detected our presence. Ground forces converging on your position. How long do we have? Myra demanded, signaling the team to defensive positions. Minutes, maybe less. Myra turned to Adara, who was already working feverishly to activate the crystal array. Will it be enough time? It has to be, Adara replied, her entire body now illuminated with complex patterns that interfaced with the temple's technology. The resonance is building. Once it reaches critical threshold, it will ripple outward, affecting any luminari within a 100-kilometer radius. The first explosion rocked the chamber entrance. Myra and the infiltration team returned fire as Krell forces began pouring through multiple access points. We'll hold them off, Myra shouted over the chaos. Just finish the sequence. The battle was brutal and swift. 3 resistance fighters fell in the initial assault. Another was wounded, covering Myra as she drove back a Krell squad leader. Blood from her reopened shoulder wound soaked her tactical gear as she fought her way back to Adara's position. At the heart of the chamber, Adara stood within a growing sphere of luminescent energy, her hands pressed against the central crystal, her voice chanting in an ancient luminary tongue. The crystal pulsed in response, its rhythm accelerating. A final Krell assault team breached the western entrance. Myra's weapon overheated as she desperately tried to hold them back. A blast caught her in the leg, sending her crashing to the ground. "Adara!" she cried out in warning as a Krell officer took aim at the vulnerable luminary. The crystal array suddenly flared with blinding intensity. A wave of pure energy erupted outward, passing harmlessly through Myra but causing every Krell in the chamber to collapse, clutching their heads in agony. In the silence that followed, Adara opened her eyes, now glowing with a brilliant white light that contained flecks of every color imaginable. "It is done," she said, her voice carrying a resonant quality it hadn't possessed before. Myra struggled to her feet, the Krell, temporarily incapacitated. Their neural patterns are disrupted by the awakening frequency. "And your people?" Before Adara could answer, the chamber filled with new arrivals, dozens of luminari, their skin glowing with newly awakened patterns, their eyes alight with recognition and purpose. They moved with grace that belied their former captivity, some still wearing the tattered remains of Krell-controlled devices. An elderly luminari woman stepped forward, her luminescence forming patterns that mirrored Adara's. "Keeper of memories," she addressed Adara in a voice raspy from disuse. "You have returned us to ourselves." "Not just to yourselves," Adara replied, moving to help Myra stand. "To a new future, one we will build in freedom." The luminari awakening spread like wildfire across the planet. As Krell forces scrambled to contain the situation, they found their communication systems disrupted by telepathic interference, their security protocols compromised by luminari who remembered every access code they had ever observed. From the horizon's bridge, Myra and Adara watched as the revolution unfolded across the planet below. Nerissa's fleet, bolstered by the unexpected advantage, had broken through the orbital defenses. Across 12 systems, resistance cells launched coordinated strikes against Krell outposts. "It won't be easy," Myra observed, bandaged but standing tall beside Adara. "The Krell Empire won't fall in a day or even a year." "No," Adara agreed, her hand finding Myra's. "But for the first time in generations, my people have hope, and so do all the others enslaved by the Krell." Her skin illuminated with the special pattern she reserved only for Myra. "We've started something that can't be stopped." 3 months later, on a reclaimed luminari settlement floating among the clouds of their homeworld, Myra stood on a balcony overlooking the restoration efforts. The Federation had officially recognized the Luminari Liberation Movement after evidence of Krell atrocities had been telepathically transmitted to every major diplomatic channel in the galaxy. Adara joined her, now dressed in the traditional garments of a Luminari memory keeper. "The Council has approved our proposal. Training centers will be established on 3 worlds to help the newly awakened control their abilities." "And the Coalition?" "Growing stronger, 4 more systems have declared independence from Krell control." Adara smiled, her luminescence forming a pattern that Myra now recognized as happiness. "They're calling it the Starlight Coalition, after the light that guided them to freedom." Myra turned to face her, tracing the now familiar contours of Adara's face. "And what about us? Now that you're a revered leader of your people, do you still have room in your life for an ex-Federation captain?" In answer, Adara's skin illuminated with a new pattern, one Myra had never seen before. It started at her heart and spread outward, encompassing her entire body in swirling designs of extraordinary complexity and beauty. "This is the pattern of eternal bonding," Adara explained softly. "In the ancient days, it was shared only between those who wished to join their lives completely." She took Myra's hands, placing them over the brightest point of light above her heart. "My people have a saying, freedom is not a destination, but a journey taken together." "Is that a proposal?" Myra asked, her voice thick with emotion. "It is a promise," Adara replied. "That whatever comes next, rebuilding worlds, fighting remaining Krell strongholds, establishing new alliances, we face it together." As they sealed their promise with a kiss, the lights of the newly liberated city below seemed to pulse in harmony with Adara's luminescence. A constellation of hope in a galaxy where freedom was no longer just a distant star, but a dawning reality.